Today we are going to be revisiting one of the biggest trades of last summer's offseason for the NBA, which was the Dejounte Murray getting traded to the Atlanta Hawks trade during that offseason. When it happened, it was honestly a really big shock. No one was really expecting that trade. Dejounte Murray was a young up-and-coming star with the Spurs who were trying to rebuild, so it makes sense that they wanted to keep him, but they ultimately ended up trading him, and at the time it was just a really big shock, and we're going to be going into hindsight of how it has affected both teams and which team seems to be on the better side of the deal. So that does sound interesting to you. Please hit the like button and subscribe button and watch it all the way through. But without further ado, without running on too much, just get right into this video. And to really start off and kick this video off, let's get into the trade package itself, which consisted of the Atlanta Hawks getting Dejounte Murray, Jock Landale, and the San Antonio Spurs were getting Danilo Gallinari, 3 first-round picks, and 2026 rights to swap their pick as well. So they're basically getting 3 first-round picks and the rights to 1 as well, meaning that they can get whichever pick ends up being the better one. They have an option between those two. So they got a pretty nice little haul for Dejounte Murray, that's for sure, especially for a rebuilding team that is trying to build for the future. And the Atlanta Hawks were able to get another star alongside Trae Young. And at the time when this trade happened, a lot of people were saying the Hawks are going to be like these super high contending level team because they were just in the Eastern Conference Finals just a few years ago with just Trae Young. And they basically got rid of no players that were very significant to the team, or at least not super significant to the team at all, and they added an all-star young guard to pair alongside Trae Young. So a lot of people were very excited to see where that could go. And then as far as the San Antonio Spurs, everybody was kind of confused why they traded Dejounte Murray, but they were also pretty much like, well, they did get a lot of picks and they probably will help their rebuild in the long term. So at the time it was perceived that it was a fairly even deal on both sides. But now fast forwarding to current day, and with the knowledge that we know now, let's talk about on both sides how this trade has panned out for, well, both sides, the Spurs and the Hawks. And the first one I'm going to get to is going to be the Atlanta Hawks side of things. And the Atlanta Hawks, despite coming into this year with very high expectations to be one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference and maybe even a dark horse contending level team, they have fallen a little bit short, especially at least for the first half of this season, as they started the year now 30-30, and at the All-Star break they ended up firing their coach in Nate McMillan, who just brought them to the Eastern Conference Finals just a few years ago. So anytime you have to fire your coach midway through a season, it is never ideal, because now you're scrambling to get a new coach. He's probably not the real guy you really wanted. He's not your first option for sure, and now you're kind of just settling for a head coach, and you're just in a weird situation. The chemistry is kind of messed up. You're learning a whole new system. It's just never ideal if you have to fire your coach midway through. And then on top of that, like I said, they just weren't having the success that they were expected to have, and a lot of their moves haven't worked the way they probably wanted to, because if you look at it, although Dejounte Murray and Trae Young are both very talented individual players, it seems that they just don't fit that well together, and especially don't play at the level that they need to win when they're on the court at the same time. Because the problem is both players love to have the ball in their hand, and that is seen as Trae Young is in the top 10 in field goal attempts per game, and Dejounte Murray is in the top 20 in field goal attempts per game, and they are taking the vast majority of a lot of their team's shots. And that's not a problem when both players are on, but even when just one, either Trae Young or Dejounte Murray, is not having a good game, they're going to struggle to win immensely, because that is where the vast majority of their shots going, and that's where the vast majority of their points are being generated as well. So if you even take one of them away, that is a huge problem for their offense. And we've seen this affect a few players on their roster as well, and probably the most significant one this has affected so far is John Collins, as John Collins this year is averaging the least points per game and 3-point percentage since his rookie season, and the same can be seen with Bogdan Bogdanović as well. And those are two very high level role players on this Atlanta Hawks team that were very big parts to this team's success just a few years ago when they made that conference finals run, but now they are struggling to find the same success, mostly because they're getting a lot less opportunity, and there's probably more pressure on the opportunity that they actually get, meaning that those shots aren't going in as frequently because they feel like they have to make the shot because they might not get another one for the next 10 possessions, because Trae Young and Dejounte Murray are going to be taking a lot of those shots. So their percentages are falling, and their points per game production as well is falling, which is never a good sign for your role players. And it was a big reason why they were trying to shop around John Collins so much, but despite shopping him around a lot, he still was not able to find a trade suitor, and no telling what the chemistry issues are looking like with that squad. Because if you really think about it, you fired your coach, you just traded for a new star, and now one of your biggest names on your roster was in a ton of trade rumors. You have have to imagine the chemistry can't be at a great point right now in that locker room at all. And now, although this is kind of a side note for the Dejounte Murray trade and doesn't really have that much to do with it, they also just traded for Saddiq Bey, and the reason that's important is because they used 5 second-round picks to do that, meaning that they have now traded 3 first-round picks, the rights to their 2026 first-round pick, and now 5 second-round picks, meaning it is going to be almost impossible for this team, unless another big trade goes down, for them to build organically through the draft in any way, shape, or form for the foreseeable future, because all those second-round picks aren't that valuable. When you give up 5 of them, one of those picks is bound to be a somewhat productive player in the league, and those are always great to have because they're going to be cheap, productive guys that you got in the second round for the next 4 years to come, which is always extremely valuable on a team. And now that they have no way to build through the first or second round for the foreseeable future, that could be a very, very big problem for the Atlanta Hawks going forward. And I just think, although the Saddiq Bey trade doesn't really have anything to do with the Dejounte Murray trade, I think it still kind of ties in due to them trading so many second round picks in order to get it done. And overall for the Hawks, I just couldn't imagine this is how they expected their trade to go. I would imagine they expected to be way better and way higher in the standings at this point, and they expected to be way higher than 30-30, and I couldn't imagine they would be expecting to be firing their coach midway through the season. Their stars aren't playing that good together. John Collins is having the worst year of his career since his rookie season, and a few other role players as well. So overall, I would have to say this trade has not panned out as nearly as well as I'm sure the Atlanta Hawks had hoped so. And now, even moving on to the San Antonio Spurs side of things, it is kind of hard to say whether this trade is actually a great thing for them or not, because we have no idea what these first round picks are going to turn into, where they're going to be at, so we really don't know how good these picks are going to be and how much of a good trade it was. But the fact that this is a rebuilding Spurs team who is going to have their own pick, and now they have 3, I think, unprotected first round picks as well in this trade, it can only do wonders for a rebuild, and it can only accelerate it. So I think for sure, although they aren't getting better right now due to it at all, because it's just picks, in the long term it should help them out. And overall, any rebuilding team wants as many draft assets as possible, and that is exactly what the San Antonio Spurs were able to get. And really looking at their recent draft history, with them getting guys like Devin Vassell on the roster, Keldon Johnson, they even drafted Dejounte Murray, among a few other guys, Malachi Branham, another one that's been very good for them. I mean, they are a very, very good drafting team, so getting this many first round picks can only be good positive signs for a rebuilding Spurs team right now. So I think for sure that is going to benefit them in the future, and I think it will end up panning out fairly well for them, because Dejounte Murray did sign with Clutch Sports and was probably going to ask out anyway, and it was probably the best that they got ahead of it early, opposed to waiting too late and then getting less for him. So the Spurs, I think, probably made a good move here, and I think the Atlanta Hawks may have gotten a little trigger happy, and I don't think that Dejounte Murray is going to ever be the second guy on this team that's going to help them lead to a championship. I don't think that Trae Young, Dejounte Murray is going to work out, and one of them will probably end up getting traded or leaving in free agency at some point if the success doesn't turn around fairly soon. But unfortunately, guys, that's more for video. So comment below, do you agree with me? Do you think that the Dejounte Murray trade was good for the Hawks, bad for the Hawks, good for the Spurs, bad for the Spurs? On your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you like me, point to the like button and subscribe button. I mean the absolute part of me. And I hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day, so you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah, blah.